This video covers from page 26 onwards, which in my edition is the ending of Act 1 of A Doll's House. So, in the previous section, Krogstad has just left, having blackmailed Nora as the family return. The children in the doorway on the left. Mother, the strange man has gone out through the gate. Nora. Yes, dear, I know, but don't tell anyone about the stranger man, do you hear? Not even father. And so we see that from Nora's point of view, the deception continues. She still thinks that somehow she will be able to lie her way out of this situation. We can discuss whether we think her motive is positive or not, but nonetheless, she's still trying to cover it up. The children say, No, mother, but will you come and play again? Nora, no, not now. And so we see how that happiness and that innocence that Nora had for a moment, that moment of escape, when she was playing with the children before Krogstad's entry, see now how that has been ruined. The children say, But mother, you promised us. Yes, but I can't now. Run along in, I have such a lot to do. Run along in, my sweet darlings. He gets them into the room by degrees and shuts the door on them, then sits down on the sofa, takes up a piece of needlework, and sews a few stitches, but soon stops. No, throws down the work, gets up, goes to the hall door, and calls out. Now remember before when we talked about how whenever we see Nora moving like this, we see how it reflects her restlessness. So, we continue. Helen, bring the tree in. Goes to the table on the left, opens a drawer, and stops again. No, it is quite impossible. We don't know what she's doing in that drawer. We're not sure. It's all very ambiguous. But when we see the reference to the tree, we also see then how this act is going to end sort of cyclically with the image that it opened with, the tree coming in. But of course, that's seen to us to present an image of happiness, cheerfulness, optimism. You know, we've all read A Christmas Carol. We all know what Christmas trees symbolize, and yet now it's going to be hollow. As Krogstad said, you know, that he had news that will ruin her Christmas. So, we continue. The maid coming in with a treat. Where shall I put it, ma'am? Here, in the middle of the floor. Shall I get you anything else? No, thank you. I have all I want. Now, in that line, there is, of course, a great irony, because as far as the world is concerned, Nora does have all she wants. It looks for all the world as if she has a husband, she has children, she has servants, she has a pleasant house. She seems to have this ideal world, this doll's house even, and yet we realize now that it is hollow. It's built on shifting foundations, and we've now seen that a small man in social terms, an insignificant man like Krogstad, has the power to destroy it all. So it's a line, although it seems like a throwaway line, it's really quite a heavily weighted one there. The maid exits. Nora begins decorating the tree. A candle here, and flowers here. The horrible man. It's all nonsense. There's nothing wrong. The tree shall be marvellous. I will do everything I can think of to please you, Torvald. I will sing for you, dance for you. Elmer comes in with some papers under his arm. Oh, are you back already? Now, a few things to note here then. You can talk about the fragmented structure of her speech here, the hesitations, these short exclamative sentences. You can see how this sort of fragmented structure echoes her rather frantic train of thought here. She is deeply upset, deeply disturbed by the thought that all that she wants, this perfect world, could be about to come crashing down. When Torvald comes in with papers under his arm, there's a parallel here, which again you can note how earlier he emerges with a pen under his arm. Once again, we see that he's symbolically associated with work, but also here, I think significantly, we've talked in the past about how a pen can be seen as a fundamentally masculine symbol. It's interesting now that we see him grasping a paper, which, again, if you think back to Desdemona and the fair paper, is something that we associate with being a symbol of femininity, and it reminds us, I suppose, back of Nora's weakness here. So he says to her, "Oh, are you back?" I beg your pardon. She says to him, "Oh, are you back already?" Helmer, "Yes. Has anyone been here?" Nora, "Here? No." See, she lies again. "That's strange. I saw Krogstad going out of the gate." In other words, he has caught her now in a lie. And of course, if he catches her in little lies, structurally we can see that bigger lies will follow. We also saw earlier the little lie over the macaroons. Structurally now, we see how the scale of her deception now will begin to increase. So, she says, "Did you? Oh yes, I forgot. Krogstad was here for a moment." He replies, "Nora, I can see from your manner that he has been here begging you to say a good word for him." Now, the way that Nora at times talks about Torvald implies that in some ways she almost underestimates him. The way, for example, that she felt like she had to act to protect his health by taking him overseas on this foreign holiday to rest up and in getting it alone. But it's at times like this that we realise that he is actually a perfectly wise and intelligent man in his own right. And John Wayne used that phrase, "a tragedy of misunderstanding," to describe Othello, and it's interesting that there are elements of that here. This relationship, they're not on easy terms with each other. Anyway, we continue. So Nora says, "Yes, and you were to appear to do it of your own accord. You were to conceal from me the fact that of his having been here. Didn't he beg that of you too?" "Yes, Torvald, but—" Nora, and would you be a party to that sort of thing? To have any talk with a man like that, and give him any sort of promise, and to tell me a lie into the bargain?" "A lie? Didn't you tell me no one had been here?" And shakes his finger at her. Now, I think we can see when Nora replies with that "a lie" and that rather pregnant pause, we can see that she, in her guilt, immediately assumes that he knows something about the fraudulent loan. But of course, it's merely the lie about Krogstad being here that Torvald is talking about, I think. But nonetheless, it's her guilt that speaks, and her guilt that makes her react like that. When he talks about a man like that, there's a sense of snobbery here, and we get the feeling that if Nora knew Mrs. Lynde and Krogstad when they were all young together in the past, is there a sense then that perhaps she has risen slightly in the world, where Mrs. Lynde has stayed the same or even sunk, and she now there's now the opportunity for them to feel this snobbery towards other characters, and Torvald here exploits that. But of course, the fact that they feel this disdain towards Krogstad is going to come back to haunt them, because clearly he is a character who's got the motivation and who's got the means to hurt them. We'll see how that continues later. So, see then Helmer's response. He shakes his finger at her, again patronising, paternalistic, patriarchal. And he says again, "My little songbird must never do that again. A songbird must have a clean beak to chirp with, no false notes." Now, depending on how you view or play this, you could argue that at the beginning of this play, it was possible to see all this sort of cheerful talk, this kind of bantering animal imagery. It's just possible that you might have viewed it as being quite harmless. But I think that now, increasingly, it starts to look rather sinister when we see Nora in a genuine position of weakness. Of course, if we take the sort of feminist view that it was always a bit sinister, which is probably not one that the original readers would have thought, then maybe we would have felt that all along. But this, a clean beak to chirp with, there's a powerful image, and no false note. It's a reminder that of the importance of reputation. For them to maintain their position in society, they cannot have any scandal associated with them in the way, for example, that Krogstad had when he lost his position. So we go on then, and he puts his arm round her waist, Something possessive there again, I think, especially to us, but he says, "That is so, isn't it?" "Yes, I am sure it is." And he lets her go. "We will say no more about it." And he sits down by the stove. How warm and snug it is in here. He turns over his papers. Nora, after a short pause during which she busies herself with a Christmas tree, says, "Torvald?" He replies, "Yes." "I am looking forward tremendously to the fancy dress ball at the Stenberg the day after tomorrow." And Helma says, "And I am tremendously curious to see what you're going to surprise me with," seemingly talking about the costume now. And she says, "It was very silly of me to want to do that." Helma says, "What do you mean?" "I can't hit upon anything that I will do. Everything I think of seems so silly and insignificant. And see now how, having seen Nora as this woman of the world, as this woman capable of decisive action, see now how she's back to playing the role of the wife. She's playing the role that society and that Torvald seems to expect of her. And he says, "Does my little Nora acknowledge that at last? And perhaps we can play it playfully." But again, to us, it just seems so terribly patronising. And she, standing behind his chair with her arms on the back of it, says, "Are you very busy, Torvald?" "Well, what are all those papers?" "Bank business." "Already?" He said, "I have got authority from the retiring manager to undertake the necessary changes in the staff and in the rearrangement of the work, and I must make use of the Christmas week for that, so as to have everything in order for the new year." Nora says, "Then that was why this poor Krogstad—" Helmer, She leans against the back of his chair and strokes his hair. "If you hadn't been so busy, I should have asked you a tremendously big favour, Torvald." And he says, "What's that? Tell me. There is no one has such good taste as you, and I do so want to look nice at the fancy dress ball. Torvald, couldn't you take me in hand and decide what I shall go as, and what sort of dress I shall wear?" "Aha, so my obstinate little woman is obliged to get someone to come to her rescue?" "Yes, Torvald, I can't get along a bit without your help." See, she plays this part, and think how that must grate for a woman of intelligence. The way that she pretends that she needs him, she pretends that she needs him to help her to choose this outfit for this fancy dress party that they are going to attend. Helmer then says, "Aha, so I beg your pardon." He says, "Very well, I will think it over. We shall manage to hit upon something." Nora says, "That is nice of you." And she goes to the Christmas tree. A short pause. Again, see, by the way, how she constantly is attracted to the Christmas tree as this symbol of Christmas and happiness and family togetherness. You know, the classic sort of Dickensian A Christmas Carol kind of image. But see how she's constantly drawn away from it by the reminder that her life now does not match up to that ideal. So, it continues on. She says, "How pretty the red flowers look, but tell me, was it really something very bad that this Krogstad was guilty of?" Helmer says, "He forged someone's name. Have you any idea what that means?" And of course, see the dramatic irony now when we find out that it was true what Krogstad said, that he did a crime that wasn't so very different from Nora's. But in a moment we'll see just how mercilessly Helmer judges him on the basis of it, and how, for Helmer, even Krogstad's attempts to rehabilitate his character will be doomed. Notice also the association of Nora with the red flowers. We know all about flowers as an image of femininity, and all about their associations of transience, of fragility, and all those things. Suddenly it's associated with weakness, beauty, but it's also weak. So I suppose in a way we can group it with the images of the things like the animals and so on as well, in terms of the presentation of Nora as weak. "So, have you any idea what that means?" Helmer asks, and of course, terrible graphic irony, we know that she knows all too well, and even if she hadn't known before, Krogstad has just told her. Nora, and we can see how all this has this sort of double meaning as it relates to her own situation, says, "Isn't it possible that he was driven to do it by necessity?" Helmer says yes, or, as in so many cases, by imprudence. And of course that is how society would judge Nora: imprudent, somebody who's incautious, unwise, foolish. It's a merciless judgment, all the more so for Nora because she knows that it reveals what Torvald's opinion would be of herself. He continues, "I am not so heartless as to condemn a man altogether because of a single false step at that time." And she, seeing a glint of hope, says, "No, you wouldn't, would you, Torvald? Many a man has been able to retrieve his character if he has openly confessed his fault and taken his punishment." And punishment? Just like the word lie on the previous page, this is something that clearly rings alarm bells with Nora, because that's the word of everything that he has said. That's the word that echoes like a sort of death knell in her heart. Helmer continues, "But Krogstad did nothing of the sort. He got himself out of it by a cunning trick, and that is why he has gone under altogether." Nora, but do you think it would? Just think how a guilty man like that has to lie and play the hypocrite with everyone, how he has to wear a mask in the presence of those near and dear to him, even before his own wife and children. And about the children, that is the most terrible part of it, Nora. Nora, how? Because such an atmosphere of lies infects and poisons the whole life of a home. Each breath the children take in such a house is full of the germs of evil. Now, let's unpick that. Of course, as we say, the dramatic irony is everything here that is said about Krogstad equally applies to Nora. Nora, who lies to her husband, constantly trying to cover it up. Think about how she was trying to get money from him earlier in the scene. He thinks it's because she's extravagant. It's really because she's trying to make the repayments for her loan. We see that there, but it goes on further. When he talks about the atmosphere of lies and uses that metaphor of infection and poisoning, the idea that somehow it would destroy a whole home. Now, of course, there's a further irony here, because, of course, as far as Torvald is concerned, Nora maintains for him a perfectly nice home. He has no knowledge of the fact that she has done this, and so we start to sense that he really is a very self-righteous man. We start to sense that he really actually is a bit of a stuffed shirt. He's not a very sympathetic character, particularly for us now. And I suppose, in a sense, he probably is meant to reflect society's wider view of actions like this. But of course, I think Ibsen is trying to tell us that actually this society is hypocritical and is unfair, is unjust, and leaves many people excluded through gender, through class, through poverty, and so on. So, we continue then, as Helmer says. "My dear, I have often seen it in the course of my life as a lawyer. Almost everyone who has gone to the bad early in life has had a deceitful mother." Of course, the dramatic irony continues because, of course, Nora is a deceitful mother, and so the implication is that somehow something terrible may happen to their children. And she says, "Why do you only say mother?" Because, again, clearly this is a society that judges the women more harshly than the men. Why do you only say mother? Helmer says it seems most commonly to be the mother's influence, though naturally a bad father would have the same effect, same result. Every lawyer is familiar with the fact. This Krogstad now has been persistently poisoning his own children with lies and dissimulation. That is why I say he has lost all moral character. And he holds out his hands to her. "That is why my sweet little Nora must promise me not to plead his cause. Give me your hand on it. Come, what's this? Give me your hand." Now, we see the implication there that somehow she's holding back from him. In some sense, I think she's perhaps horrified, perhaps revulsed by what he has said and the way that he said it, because, of course, she starts to realize now that if he ever found out about what she has done, this is how he would judge her too. And so her threat to tell Krogstad, we see now that that is empty, because she now sees, if ever she thought of it, that she could never tell him. So, let's see. Come, what's this?" As she refuses to come to him for a moment. "Give me your hand. There now, that's settled. I assure you it would be quite impossible for me to work with him. I literally feel physically ill when I am in the company of such people." Great irony still, because of course this is Nora, but he doesn't feel ill, he doesn't know it. It's simply his self-righteousness, his moralising, not a sympathetic character. Nora takes her hand out of his and goes to the opposite side of the Christmas tree. It's terribly hot in here, and I have such a lot to do. And we get a sense then there's again about the kind of paranoia that describes her. She suddenly feels this heat, this fear, this guilt. It's that sudden realization that wherever her help is going to come from, it's not going to be from her husband. Helmer gets up and puts his paper in order. Yes, and I must try and read through some of these before dinner, and I must think about your costume too. And it is just possible I may have something ready in gold paper to hang up on the tree, referring to the custom in many parts of Europe of actually hanging Christmas presents on the tree, which is what that's talking about. It says that he puts his hand on her head, and again, the patronising imagery continues. You can group it all there together. He says, "My precious little singing bird." He goes into his room and shuts the door after him, and Nora, after a pause, whispers, "No, no, it isn't true. It's impossible. It must be impossible." I think she is perhaps horrified by, first of all, the realization that Torvald can never know about this. Second of all, the realization that this man that she's loved, this man whose life she has saved, is as prejudiced as that, as judgmental as that, and in fact that he would have so little sympathy for her. The nurse opens the door on the left. The little ones are begging so hard to be allowed to come in to Mother. "No, no, no, don't let them come in to me. You stay with them, Anne." "Very well, Ma'am," and shuts the door. And Nora, pale with terror, "Deprave my children, poison my home." A short pause. Then she tosses her head. "It's not true. It can't possibly be true." And I think here we see one of the reasons why this play has been acclaimed as being such a sort of a significant play by the sort of feminist movement, because we see here a woman who is starting to fight back against this sort of patriarchal wisdom as symbolized by her husband. She's starting to fight back against the hypocritical judgments of society, and she's trying to find her own way where she can do the best for her family. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that it's not as if Nora is acting out of self-interest. She hasn't done this here for her own good. She hasn't been, for example, taking a loan to buy luxuries for herself. All of this has been done from love and to preserve her family. Ultimately, she is of good intentions, whatever else you might be able to say about her actions. Now, as with the rest of this play, you will notice that Nora, in spite of all the other characters that come and go, remains trapped in this room. So this is a doll's house. This is something that is an illusion of perfection, but it's also for Nora a prison. We see her, how the play begins when she enters here, and actually the play, in fact, will, to all intents and purposes, end when Nora again leaves it. But in the meantime, we see her trapped, and again, it's very symbolic of the position of women, I think, at this time. And that concludes the notes for Act 1 of A Doll's House.